I'd like to welcome you to this conversation with author Roger Ross. Roger's latest book is Comeback, Returning to the Life You Were Made For. And joining us are three other guests, and we'll introduce those folks in just a moment. But first, I want to just describe the book very briefly. And Roger, in this really great book, you walk us through 5 different stages for making a comeback from loss or failure or heartache, whether that heartache or loss or failure is something that we brought on ourselves or something that we had no control over. And you walk us through these 5 crucial stages for making a comeback. And with each stage, you pair a spiritual practice, an ancient spiritual practice that we can employ as a part of that journey of comeback. And in the participant guide that goes along with the book, you really lay out a process for people to do on their own or as a part of a group or as a part of an entire congregation to practice and to really just learn how to take each step along this journey of comeback and to make it a reality in their lives. And it's really a book that works for individuals and groups and entire congregations to work through. And we've seen churches actually do this as a sermon series and have had just wonderful things happening in people's churches and in people's individual lives as a result of the book. And so I'd like now to turn to each of our panelists. And you've all had a chance to read Comeback and to use it in different settings and ministry, some of you. And I know that you've all been thinking about other ways that it might be useful. And so I'm wondering if each of you might share just a couple of ideas for how you've used this book, why it was important for you, and especially if we can think about why this book is important for churches at this point in time and at this place in our culture. And so, Andy Adams, I'm wondering if you would just introduce yourself and share your thoughts on this topic of why this is an important book for us now.
Yeah, happily. My name is Andy Adams. I'm privileged to be the senior pastor at Troy United Methodist Church in Troy, Illinois. We're a congregation of around 600 in attendance each week. And, I was, I guess, on the front edge of leading a church through this comeback study we did in the late summer, early fall of 2020. And I would say that this is perfect timing for any church, any congregation to either have a study or a sermon series, because we have all, as a society, experienced a fall recently, one that we did not foresee, one that was beyond our control, and yet a fall nonetheless. And as a pastor during this time, I've seen a vast majority of our congregation stay united and rally together in the midst of pandemic life and everything else that has been going on in our culture and society over the last year or so. But I have also seen, regrettably, several people fade away from community, fade away from the life of the church, fade away from a meaningful relationship with God. And I could easily envision a church using this book and pairing it with a corresponding sermon series as an intentional way to re-engage those who have faded away, along with many others who have always been outside the church, because this pandemic life and everything else that has come with it in our society over the past several months have made, I believe, more people open to the activity of God in their lives as they have recognized and been confronted with their own vulnerability. Really, this book couldn't have come at a better time.
Yeah, I agree. Those are great thoughts, and a great sort of call to action for churches to start thinking about what this might mean for them. Teresa, can you tell us a little bit about where you are and who you are, and how you would respond to this question, why this book is important right now?
I'm Teresa Pratt. I'm a nurse, but currently I'm the ministry team leader of Celebrate Recovery at New Horizon Church in Champaign, Illinois. And that's a recovery ministry that is all about addressing hurts, hangups, and habits. And we are just in this messy middle of unprecedented times. And it's not where we're not where we used to be, and we're not where we're going to be, but we need to address that mess. And our messy lives can, at this kind of time, can be in. We know the statistics about increase in drug use, alcohol use, but a lot of different compulsive behaviors, workaholism off the charts. People are fearful. People need to really work on self-care. That's what I need to work on the most. But we need to address our mess, and we need a restart. We need a comeback. And this book is a way to find our miracle and ultimately our miracle maker. And we don't want to quit before our miracle happens through working through a book like Comeback. So I'm so grateful. I've heard Roger say, he wrote this book because he needed this book. God led him to write this book, but we need this book now. I'm just so grateful for Roger listening to God so that we can listen to God through it. And so let's let this book be an on-ramp so that we can be all God wants us to be, have peace, have serenity, have freedom. And I just can't wait to hear all the welcome home stories that are going to happen from people using this book on an individual basis, in groups, and as a congregation, for sure.
That's wonderful. This book is an on-ramp. I love that. What a great way to phrase it. And Josh, tell us your thoughts. Tell us first who you are and where you are, and then tell us what you're thinking about this book and the time we find ourselves.
Yeah, so I'm Josh Schaller, and I am the mobile camping coordinator at the United Methodist Conference here in Missouri, and I work in Next Gen Ministries. So much of what I do is working with children's leaders and youth leaders. And so a lot of my perspective on this book is not just necessarily for the church at large, but for some of those ministries that are going to be needing to come up with maybe new ways of doing things. When we kind of look at the world as is now and our plan for what's going forward, I think it's important to know that the old way of doing things is gone. We kind of live in a new time now, and so I think it's really important for our churches, to be studying this book honestly as a leadership team or with your leaders and your volunteers in your program. Helps get back to why. So we want to get back to ministry and why we want to do these things. Well, what's important to us, and getting back to the root of what's important and letting God speak out of those conversations, not injecting ourselves into those conversations. And so as we kind of transform, the way that we do things, I think this is the perfect time for a book like this, as everyone else has said. It is that everyone is in need of a comeback. Ministries are in need of a comeback. And as we look to continue to invite people back into these relationships, I think it's important that we have a plan for that as well, and what that looks like. So absolutely love seeing this in action, and would encourage anybody that's in leadership at a church to be studying this with your team and sharing it with other churches in your vicinity. And then sharing it with anybody that's kind of on that volunteer team that you have at your church as well, because I think it can do really wonderful things if we get back to our why and plan that comeback with God's help.
Excellent. Yeah, those are great ideas of different places within the church where this book could really be powerful. And Roger, you wrote the book. You had no idea when you were writing this book that it would come out in the middle of a pandemic and that we would be struggling for so many months and facing all of the things that our panelists have just described that really require a lot of work to come back from. So how would you answer this question? Why is this book important now?
Well, I appreciate you asking, Connie. We keep passing grim milestones in our country just with regard to the battle against COVID. I mean, some time ago, we reached the point where we had lost far more people to COVID than we had in all those that had died in World War I, World War II, and the Vietnam War combined. That alone is a tragedy of unthinkable magnitude that will take years to fully absorb and heal from. But we can't wait for years to deal with this kind of multifaceted fall. We have to start now. We have to get on the comeback trail now. Long term, it doesn't really help to share well-meaning phrases like, well, it's going to be okay. Just keep your head up. You're going to make it. People who are facing tragic loss or life-altering setbacks don't really need us to share platitudes. They need us to share a process, something that offers tangible hope. They need someone to say, look, we know that you've had a really hard fall. We know that it's really deeply hurt you, but you don't have to set up camp there for the rest of your life. Now, there are steps that you can take to come back, to actually return to the life that you were made for. It's not too late. You have not gone too far. You were made for a comeback. So let's talk about it. Let's get started now.
And you have offered this just really marvelous book and study guide to help us do just that. So we are so grateful. I think I speak for all of the panelists and say, Roger, thank you for doing this work, for listening to God's voice on that retreat many, many months ago.
Well, thank you, every one of you, for being a part of this. It means the world to me just to have this kind of conversation with you and to see the ways in which you are using some of these ideas already in various places to have an impact in people's lives. That's what warms my heart.
And we know that it will keep going and that others will find this resource and use it really well. And so with all of that, I just want to say to those of you who are watching, we hope that you have enjoyed this chance to visit with Roger and these panelists who have shared so many great ideas and just personal insights about this book and the way that it can be useful in their ministries and in your ministry and in your lives. And if you would like any more information about the book, or especially if you would like to purchase a copy, I'd invite you to visit cokesbury.com. That's COKESBURY.com. And once again, just thank you for spending this time. Panelists, Roger, and those of you who are viewing, may God bless you wherever you are and with whatever kind of comeback you need in your life.